tonight, eh?
Milo, is that you?
There, I think I got it. Bruce, are you ready?
I am ready.
You are ready. We are now going
I'm ready.
We are now going to do
You
another.
ready?
I'm ready. I'm always ready. You know that.
Both ready.
Put a microphone in front of me, and I'm ready to go.
Rough and ready. That was an old cartoons.
And actually, I'm ready to go without the microphone, so you might as well stick it in front of me. Tonight we're going to do an interview. We're doing an episode. We're having an episode.
Yes.
We're interviewing a fella from Pennsylvania who I got the idea to interview this fella from Tom Jacobs.
All right. Superfan 0013.
Superfan 0013. And I have it on good authority from this fella that Tom's wardrobe is acceptable at many times.
Wow.
Yeah. So the fellow we're going to interview is Jerry Britton, who's a Pennsylvania modeler.
Right.
And when he I don't even know. Oh, yeah. I remember that Tom said the next day after we were talking to Tom on doing a virtual hobby shop, the next day I got an email from Jerry says, hey, somebody saw you guys were talking about me. I said, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, if you'd like to be interviewed, just let me know. And he said, sure. And he seemed enthusiastic, except he asked me what the questions would be.
Oh. But he's still here.
But he's still here because I had to reply as I always do when people ask me what would the range of questions be. Because
Yes.
I have no idea because I don't have any written down.
No, this is not the Kelly questions, which we have questions.
Well, yeah, that was because that was invented by Bruce Kelly, the number one superfan number one.
Yes.
So, anyways, tonight we're going to interview Jerry Britton, and I think we should get right to it because he grew up around 3 Mile Island.
Uh-huh.
He has three eyes and 4 ears.
Blinky the three-eyed fish on Simpsons.
yeah, Blinky the three-eyed fish. Yeah. All right, let's get right to it.
Okay, Jerry, come on down.
All right, guys, how's it going?
Come on down. Yeah. Hey, Jerry, how you doing, buddy?
All right.
All right. So Tom told you we were talking about you.
Yeah.
Did we say anything good?
I don't know. That's why I asked what the topic would be, because I didn't know what you guys were talking about.
Have you ever heard our show?
Oh, yeah.
We talk about model trains, model railroading, and everything in between. Everything that got you started and everything that has nothing to do with it.
And hockey and hot dogs.
Hockey, hot dogs, cars.
Baseball, apple pie, Chevrolet, the whole thing.
Stories about me, more stories about me.
And then when you got a few more stories about it.
Yeah, when I get more stories. And then I'm always out looking for stories.
Yes.
And always creating stories. Jerry, here's a little tidbit for you, buddy.
Yep.
It's something I just picked up this last weekend, as a matter of fact. If you ever decide to go chasing a Category 4 hurricane, it probably ixnay on that idea.
I've never done that. What inspired you to do that?
Because it was there.
They're evacuating millions of people, and you want to fly the other direction.
Yeah, the good traffic was good.
Yeah, I bet it was. I bet you didn't take your motorcycle, did you?
No, I took the rental car. Are you kidding? And yeah, you can make. I always observe the speed limit, but had I been of a mind to go faster than the speed limit, you could make pretty good time when the whole place has been deserted because there's a Category 4 hurricane coming.
Anyway.
So the reason we're here is to talk to you about your life, your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations, and everything else in between. So where do you live?
A little hole in the wall called Edders, Pennsylvania, which is halfway between Harrisburg and York. Most people would think it's like an hour north of Baltimore. It's the easiest way to describe it.
Okay, and is it Baltimore is north of Philadelphia?
No, Philadelphia's to the east. So Philadelphia, downtown Philly is about an hour and a half away, closer to 2 hours. And Baltimore straight south about an hour.
All right, so if you're coming down from Boston, it's Boston, New York, Then what's next?
Philly, Wilmington, Baltimore, then DC.
Okay, so you're an hour east of Baltimore,
North of Baltimore.
north of Baltimore, and you're kind of west of Philly.
Yeah, because you're talking about 95. That goes at kind of an angle. So I'm straight north of Baltimore and straight west of Philly.
Am I talking that fast? I didn't think I was doing more than about 70. But
It was a 65 construction zone, so.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so you live in Edders. How big is Edders?
Hard to say. It actually is not a place. It is like everything that's not named in the area. If you look on a map, it doesn't exist. So if you take the area outside of all the boroughs in the township, that's Edders. So you blink and you miss it. It's a rural area between the two cities, York and Harrisburg, and those two rural areas outside of those cities just kind of blend together, and I'm right in the middle between them. So it's a country area, but yet your home lots are still an acre or less.
Okay, so if I was driving down the road, would I see a sign that says Edders?
No,
there is no sign. There is no place called Edders.
Right, we're incognito.
So you're not in Edders.
No, he just said he was incognito.
My mailing,
Cognito, Pennsylvania.
my mailing address is Edders.
Okay.
I'm in Newbury Township.
Okay. Yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense to me. How about you, Bruce?
Yeah, sure. Let's go. Yeah.
But here's a factoid. 2 years ago, our little league baseball team,
Right.
The Ponies or whatever they call them, won the U.S. National Championship, and they went on to the World Series in Williamsport.
Right.
So they were right here, a half mile from my house is their field.
And the name of the team is called?
Redland.
Redland.
Yes.
Is there a town called Redland?
No.
So where exactly do you live, Jerry? You live somewhere east of Baltimore.
North of Baltimore.
North of Baltimore. Does it really matter at this point?
No, it doesn't.
Do you have a house?
I do.
How long have you been in that house?
25 years.
I feel like I'm doing that who's on first thing, Bruce.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you go to your house, where is your house?
Yeah. What's the mailing address at your house? If I wanted to mail you a present, where would I send it?
Classified.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's in Edders.
It's in Edders.
So,
but while we're on it, Edders is named after the original postmaster for the area, Henry Eder.
Henry Eder.
Not to
Exactly.
be confused with Henrietta.
No, exactly. So the town named Edders that doesn't exist was named after a fella named Eder.
Yes.
Okay.
And the post office was in the town of Goldsboro.
And the post
Just-
office,
Just to add to the confusion.
which is named after a fella named Bobby.
I don't know.
Do you remember what song was it that Bobby Goldsboro had? He had one hit, didn't he, Bruce?
He had a few.
Did he really?
A couple.
Okay, he was one of those guys that really. I thought he had one major hit. I forget what it was.
Yeah, some about loving some chick who died.
And that would be a great question to add to the Kelly questions. Name Bobby Goldsboro's hit. Okay. So, how long have you lived in Pennsylvania your whole life?
Yes.
Born and raised?
Born and raised.
At any point, have you actually lived in a town?
Grew up in the suburbs of Harrisburg, and then I spent a couple years in state college when I was in college.
It's at Pennsylvania University.
Yep, Pennsylvania State University.
Penn State. I've been to State College a few times myself.
That's the place.
Okay, and home of Joe Paterno.
Yep.
But things kind of went south there.
Honey.
Don't get me started.
What's that, Bruce?
Honey was his
Oh,
big hit.
yeah, that's right, Honey. Yeah, exactly.
Hey, the tree, how big it's grown, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, exactly. Don't do that again, Bruce.
Okay.
So how did you get started in model railroading?
I got a train set at Christmas, HO, um, probably just a loop of track. I don't remember, but it was a Reading locomotive, and I think it was maybe a Mantua Jeep 30 or something like that. It was a pretty common locomotive at the time.
Does Mantua even exist anymore? I don't think so.
I don't think
They
so.
were bought out by Tyco,
Or were they?
and then I'm not even sure if Tyco's around anymore.
I don't know if Tyco's even around.
I don't think so.
None of those toy train things don't really. I guess what's the closest we have to a toy train manufacturer these days? Would that be Bachmann?
Probably Bachmann.
Yeah, and yet they make some quality model railroad stuff.
They sure do.
Yeah. Okay, so you got your train at a young age. What'd you say, 4 or 5?
Probably 5 or 6.
All right. Now, how do you feel that Christmas went that year? Was it generally pretty good?
Yeah, it's a good deal. Dad went out and afterwards and got a sheet of plywood, and we put together our first snap track layout from an Atlas book. I don't remember which one it was, but it was like an up and over kind of deal.
Okay, and so that would have been around 1967, would it not?
Yeah, 67, 68. Yep.
All right. Do you remember what else happened in 1967?
67.
Yeah. Couple of huge events. Huge events.
Was that Martin Luther King?
No.
Was that 67? That was 68.
Yeah, I believe so. You kind of brought it. You kind of brought us down there, Jerry.
Oh, sorry.
I wasn't really looking for death at that point.
67. No, I can think of things in 68 and 69, but where are we going with 67?
I don't have a comeback for that, Bruce.
Of course, I'm thinking of the Detroit riots. So.
Okay. Well, here's what I was coming at. Here's where I was going.
Why didn't you tell us what you were hoping the answer was?
It was the last year that the Toronto Maple Leafs won the Stanley Cup.
Oh, yes.
And it
yes.
was also Canada's 100th birthday.
Yes. and the last year before NHL expansion.
And the last year of the original 6, exactly. And none of the...
Give yourself the Gibbs slap upside the head.
Yeah. You guys came up with the Detroit riots. and the demise of Dr. Martin Luther King. Well, thanks, boys. So anyways, you and your dad, you got some plywood, you started building the layout. And did you kind of keep going, or were you enthusiastic throughout your younger years?
Well, with that house we were in, it was a flat sheet of plywood. It was an up and over. We never actually fastened the track down, so with snap track, it was always coming apart, that kind of thing. And I was young, so there wasn't too much I could do myself other than reconnect the track. But shortly thereafter, 1970, we moved to a new house, and we actually put a layout together with framing, another Atlas plan. It was like a 4x8 with a 2x4 L extension on it. And at that point, I was starting to learn how to use tools and saws myself, and I expanded on that a bit, but it was still pretty primitive. And then 78, we moved to a different house. And the neat thing about that house is it had a shed out in the yard with, it was like maybe 10 by 20 with electric. And I pretty much got the run of that. But I never got very far because it was a year or two before I was off to college, and everything went away in the boxes for a few years.
So you were doing it all through your teenage years?
Yeah.
Okay. Bruce, I want to apologize to you.
Why?
And to all the fans out there, or all the people listening. Stuart, you may want to pull over and get ready to pound your head into the guardrail. So let me get this straight. Your first house was a flat sheet of plywood.
First layout was a flat sheet of plywood. Okay.
I apologized before I did it. Okay. So you went off to college where'd you go to school?
Penn State.
Penn State, in State College, Pennsylvania.
That's right.
All right. And what did do you mind if I asked what you went to college for? Or would you study?
Beer and girls.
Ah,
Did you get a B? Did you get a BA in that?
A BS, year degree.
Or what?
But it took me 5.5 years.
Well, that's good.
I wasn't like a stellar student.
And was Dad foot the bill for all this?
Most of it.
So
That last half year was on me.
okay.
Of course, that's when I got the best grades.
Yeah, once you realized you were after going to pony him. What? So what did you take in at Penn State?
Well, I was in a program, commercial recreation and tourism management, and I got a minor in business. My goal, my plan was I was into scuba diving, and I was going to head down to the Caribbean and work at a resort. That was the big plan.
Well, that's pretty
And
cool. That's a pretty good plan.
yeah, well, but then the thing happened. I met a girl.
Okay.
She was 2 years behind me, so when I graduated, it's like, all right, what do you do now? And I made the decision to forego that plan, at least at the time. And I actually got a similar related job. I was working for a boat dealership, so I was selling boats. So family was into boating. You need boats for scuba diving, so I was doing a related thing at the time. And eventually, I did marry that girl, so she's still with me today.
there you go.
That's cool. And is she your best friend?
Absolutely.
All right. This seems to be going really well, don't you think, Bruce?
It's smoking.
So you were selling boats, and you sold a yacht to Donald Trump, and the rest is history.
That's it. No, actually, I was only there for a couple months. We sold all kinds of power boats, cruisers, small yachts, but you don't typically sell many of them in Pennsylvania over the winter
No.
because you can't do anything with them. And a local back then, this was you're talking 85, so personal computers were just then coming into vogue, and I dabbled with them my last year or two in college. And a local computer dealer had an opening for a sales representative, and the light bulb went off in my head. Gee, if I worked for a computer dealer, I could get my own computers at wholesale. So I applied and got the job, and I've been in IT ever since then. So it was kind of a change of careers.
Wow. So you took 5 years at Penn State to learn
Five and a half.
5.5 and you got a degree in tourism and all that stuff.
Yep.
With a minor in what?
Business.
Business. And now you're selling computers.
At the time, I did that for about 4 years.
Are you Steve Jobs?
No.
Oh, okay. All right. So what year is it?
Big fan.
So 1985 is when you started selling computers.
Yep.
And now you're out of school, and are you getting interested in the hobby again yet, or no?
Not yet. Because I was still, living in an apartment, had a roommate, until my to-be wife graduated, and then we were in a townhouse apartment. So the wheels were turning in the head, but still no layout. The old HO stuff was all packed up. Hadn't even had it out of the boxes.
Okay, and what was the big computer that you would sell in 1985? Like, you think back to that, what was the big thing that you were selling?
Well, the Macintosh 512 had just come out, and I was there just the right time when laser printers were coming out and software that let you do publishing on the computer. So it really started a whole new industry in what they call desktop publishing. And the dealer, the chain of stores that I worked for, every store had a specialist in desktop publishing, and I started specializing in that. And for about 10 grand, you get a laser printer, Mac computer, hard drive, and the software to do it. And so I was doing that for about 3 years of that 4 years.
And that seemed like it was dirt cheap at the time.
When you compared it to some of the other brands, it was very expensive. The premium to get the Macintosh. But when you looked at what it could do for the publishing industry, it was a real game changer.
So Macintosh 512, was that like their first one, or?
Second. The first one was 128K.
Oh.
So this was 512K of memory. Wow.
And what was a
What a monster.
Bruce? I always remember this, and I don't know. I maybe told this story a couple of times, but I remember you and I were talking once. I don't know why. You know how some things stick in your head. And you and I were talking, and we were talking computers back in the late '80s or early '90s or whenever it was. And one of us said, so I said something about I got a new computer, and it had, like one mega RAM, or it was a 5 times. And you said, "Oh man, that thing is smoking."
Yeah, yeah.
And it's
Full
like,
floppy.
yeah.
Yeah, it's got both sides floppies. Ooh, yeah.
Can you imagine if I'd said to you, yeah, but Bruce, in about 25 years, you're going to be walking around with something in your hand that's 10 times more powerful than this will ever be.
Yeah.
So
Well, at the time, IBM's product that we sold had an optional hard drive. You could get 5 megabytes of hard drive storage for an additional
Ooh.
$2,000.
Wow. That's
Bonus.
unbelievable. And so how long did you stick at that job?
I was there till '89. Things started changing where you started seeing like the Dells and some of these other manufacturers starting to sell, online or market nationally. So the margin started to drop. And since you're paid commission on margin, I said, I'm going to have to start selling twice as much to make the same dollar. And about the same time I was thinking that, a local college had an opening for a director of publications to take their publishing department into the computer age. They've been doing it traditionally, and they wanted to adopt desktop publishing. I was selling desktop publishing, so I went there and became their director of publishing did that for 5.5 years.
Okay, and is this in Harrisburg or?
Elizabethtown, which is about a half an hour east.
Okay, and is there actually an Elizabethtown?
There is.
All right, okay.
That one's on the map.
So the college, what was the name of the college?
Elizabethtown College.
Okay, so the Elizabethtown College wanted you to take their program, their publishing program, into the 21st century.
Right.
And is there any chance you could do that with the NMRA?
Oh, boy.
I apologize.
How much time do you have tonight?
Do you belong to the NMRA?
I do belong.
Good.
I take the cheap membership because the magazine does nothing for me.
Right, exactly. So all three of us belong to the NMRA. I think that's important to let everybody know, don't you, Bruce?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes.
Like Bruce.
Bruce was on mute. I think
I was on mute, yes.
it's important for everybody to know all three of us are NMRA members, so we support the NMRA.
Exactly. I'm a life member.
Exactly. And I'm just a member. I'm here to irritate and on my behalf, on the NMR website, if you Google my name, it'll search my name, it comes up with an article I wrote for Model Railroader in 2003 about why the NMRA is so great. So there you go.
All right.
So when did you get married? What year?
87.
Okay, so what about the trains now? Now you're working for the college. Anything in the trains yet?
No, I went to the college in '89.
Right.
We also moved from a rental apartment to a townhouse in '89. The wheels were still turning, but still no layout.
Okay, so that's where you are now. You're still at Elizabethtown College?
Nope. I left there in '89.
Right.
And I went to a company that still in the publishing industry. They would do the page layout work for a lot of the international textbook publishers like Houghton Mifflin, the big name, Holt, Reinhardt, Winston, the guys that are making textbooks for college or high school. And I went into a IT support role there.
Okay.
So I went from selling desktop publishing to managing desktop publishing to supporting desktop publishing.
And all of this with no formal education in computers.
Yep, self-taught.
Self-taught. And back then they were just looking for anybody that could do it.
Yep.
So the degree, it was a golden age because degrees weren't important. It was what ability you had that was important.
Yes.
And I was going to ask a really good question. I wonder what it was. I can't remember what it was. It was a really, really, really good question about the computer industry. All right. So anyway, so now you're an IT guy, and
Yep.
you're doing that, and now you're You're starting to build a layout.
Nope.
No.
So
How old are
first
you?
child
How old are you now? Like at that
right
point?
now.
No, at that point.
Oh, at that point, so went to the college in '89, built a new townhouse in '89. So I would have been carry the one, 27,
Yeah, you were born in. Just so you know, you were born in
20,
'62.
62, 72, 82, 89, 27.
All right. Okay. So all right. So at the age of 27, now you're overseeing an IT department. You're the IT guy.
I was the IT department.
Oh, I know what the question I was going to ask was. Not really related to anything other than you were saying you're working for a company that worked with textbooks.
Yes.
Do they even have textbooks in university anymore?
Yeah, they're protecting that industry because there's so much money in it.
Okay, that's
An
interesting.
insane amount of money in it.
Right. So that.
And the crazy thing, most of them, when you buy the textbook, there's a sleeve in the back with a copy of the textbook on CD. So it's like, why the heck can't you just buy the CD?
Okay, so it's very similar to the NMRA thing. They're protecting the magazine whenever.
Yeah, because the authors tend to be professors. So the professors at the various schools write books. They get a publisher to publish their book. They make a boatload of money on it.
All right.
So they're making money out of higher ed.
Yeah, exactly. That's not right. That's we gotta put an end to that now too. Boy, we got a lot to do on it. We got a big to do list. Bruce, don't you think? Bruce.
Yes,
Bruce.
it's going to be about a 4x8 sheet of plywood worth of list.
Well, oddly enough, Jerry lived in a house that was a sheet of plywood.
So I heard.
Okay. So now what's happening? Now you're in the IT department. What happened next?
So I was there for.
Did you have any hobbies at this point? So you're 27. You've been married couple of 3 years, and you were a model railroader. You were interested in that. Then you went off to college. Did you have any? You were a scuba diver. So all the time you're doing scuba diving.
Yeah, but I hurt my back in '92 and was not able to dive. Actually, I haven't been diving since.
But we haven't got to 92 yet. We're still back at 89.
Okay, never mind. I'm fine.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah, stay with the timeline here.
yeah. So so I'm still I'm in a townhouse style like apartment thing.
Right.
And I was doing some consulting on the side, and I got into I had written some custom software that I used at Elizabethtown College, and I'm like, I wonder if I can market this. So started doing that on the side and had some mixed success. But along the way, I started doing a variety of consulting, and that kept me busy. I didn't have the time to do anything else. So there was still no layout. And then we get into the early '90s. First child came, '92, and then we made the decision in '93 to build a house. So there's no point in starting a layout when you're moving.
Right.
So, they built the house that we're currently in We moved in '94.
And where's that?
Still in Edders.
Oh, you're in Edders.
Yeah, from the time we were married on, '87 on, was in Edders.
So is there a town named Edders?
No.
But yet he's in Edders.
Yeah, exactly.
This is like one of these science fiction
I know.
things where somebody gets in a time warp and they're in another dimension. And
It's a few miles outside of Pixley, and you can stay over at the Shady Rail.
There you go.
All right, there you
okay,
go.
I accept that.
Now we got it.
Is it very far from Bug Tussle?
The buck.
Okay, so how'd you hurt your back?
Before my daughter was born in '92, we bought the nursery furniture. It's, one of those gigs you got to put it together.
Yeah.
And they package it all in one box that weighs about 1.5 tons. And I made the mistake of not getting directly behind it, and I reached out to the side and pulled it towards me, and my back just wrenched up. And it literally took over 15 years until I found the right specialist to know what was wrong with it and fixed it.
Really?
So I was in a ton of pain for many, many years. I still have a limp because of nerve damage from that. my left ankle's a mess.
Geez, you hear a lot of stories like that where people search and search and search for the correct medical answer.
Well, and you know what? I found it on the internet in one of my railroad groups. Believe it or not.
Of course.
Many years later, I just mentioned that somebody asked on one of these online lists, how's the layout coming? I'm like, oh, I haven't worked on it for a while. I'm having problems with my ankle. I get this direct email from a guy, and he was a retired ankle specialist. He asked me for my symptoms, and he said, you've got a problem with such and such a nerve. I'm like, you're kidding me. You're in Florida. I'm in Pennsylvania. You're diagnosing me in a railroad list for what's wrong with my ankle. But I Googled for specialists in the area, and they had one for that nerve at Hershey Medical Center. And I went down there, and that led to the eventual cure.
Wow.
Yeah, go figure.
Well, that's good that it eventually cured. It's frustrating when it takes so many years.
Yeah, absolutely. But the back's in good shape, but I seem to have this permanent damage in the ankle.
That's like my wife. She had to have 2 hip replacements, and I mean, they were telling her she had Lyme disease, and they were telling her she had this and that. The next thing, and I finally took her to the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, Ohio, and
which actually exists.
Which actually exists, yeah. And
is there a town named after that?
Yeah, there's a town named Cleveland, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
And anyways, it was a back guy, and he was like, all right, must be your back, or it might be your back. But he was like a high-end specialist, and he says, before I start screwing around with your back, he says, I'd really like to get an MRI on your pelvis area just so I can be sure. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the guy saying, back surgery is really tricky. He says, before I start screwing around in your back. Anyways, so we go back, we get the MRI, we come back to him, and he says, let me show it to an orthopedic guy. And the orthopedic guy maybe looks at it for 10 seconds and go, well, you need hip replacements. And that's what the problem was, And it's
wow.
like, and you're kind of walking around going, okay, so how did we get to Lyme disease and everything else when it was our hips all along, Kind of like medicine 101. And she had no cartilage in there and everything. The guy went, well, you need hip replacements. And I'm thinking, why is it that hard? I guess it's like finding an auto mechanic. Here's my take on doctors. I've had some over the last 2 or 3 years. I've had some interaction with a number of doctors. Here's my take on doctors, Bruce. I'm going to digress. Is that okay for a minute?
Why can we stop you, or how can we stop you? Why should we stop you?
Exactly.
You will do it anyhow.
Exactly.
So feel free.
Everybody would be happy if their doctor was rated in the top 20% of doctors. I think everybody would think to themselves, well, they're not asking for too much. They'll take the guy that's he's in the top 20%. Not that they don't want the whole world. Well, the problem with that is, okay, so you're willing to take anybody in the top 20%. So you're in a room full of 100 doctors. That means there's 80 of them that you don't want to have anything to do with. So it's kind of a scary thought when you say that, when you think of it that way. Anyway,
so Doc, I understand you're in the top 20 on Craigslist.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so now it's 92, 90-ish. So you're building a house.
Yep.
Are you building a house with a model railroad in mind?
Yes.
Oh, progress has been made.
Progress has been made.
So, but it long convoluted story after that. But so I moved into the house in '94. Had to build an office in the basement because I had a business on the side and I needed some office space. I set aside initially like a 10 by 17 foot room for the train, and there was going to be a family room in the basement. So this is before the internet took off, and the internet was probably financially was probably the worst thing that ever happened to me, because I discovered other Pensy people out there. In other words, before that time, I was content modeling, picking up anything that had Pennsylvania Railroad on it. I had locomotives that weren't correct. I had an Athearn DD40 that the Pensy never had. I had the...
Where'd he go?
He disappeared.
Jerry! We've had some sort of technical glitch. What did you do to him, Bruce?
I did nothing.
Is this the Kobayashi Maru?
I must be.
Sure,
He's showing there, but he's not there.
Yeah, he's showing.
Oh, no, he's gone now.
Now he's just gone.
it's like Eddersville. It's there, but not.
Yeah. It's like Eddersville. Yeah,
anyhow, this may be a good time to throw in some elevator music.
It was going pretty good too. I felt
it was going pretty good.
I felt like we were building to a. I had
we were coming up to a crescendo of some sort.
Oh, look at that! I see he's back. Maybe.
Yeah, I don't know what the heck happened there. It said I lost my internet connection, but I opened up another window and I got right out to like CNN. So I'm not sure what was going on.
What's happening on CNN?
Oh, nothing. I just wanted to see if I had connectivity.
Well, we'll pull it up and let's see what the lead story is.
Oh, how much of that did you hear?
Way too much. No. I'm just kidding. Where were we, Bruce? He was building the house, a 10 by 17.
Building the house, a 10 by 17 foot room,
a family room
with a business on the side,
a family room.
Yeah. So at the time, my previous collection of Pensy stuff, I was buying anything a manufacturer would slap Pensy on because I didn't know better. And this was the time when the internet was really coming into vogue, and I started finding other people online that were interested in the Pensy, and then I started finding out, oh, well, they never had that, or they had this instead. And so I asked the Department of the Interior, my wife,
right,
if I could have more space. And so we cordoned off more area, and I still didn't even have a plan. And then I did a crazy thing around 1999, decided to switch scales.
Oh.
Yep, out of the blue, I decided if I'm going to get in what I want to get in, to be satisfied with it, I'm going to go to N scale.
Okay.
And I had some really good friends in the area that had N scale. I went to a train shop, bought a piece of Flex Track and just a couple of cars so that I had something to fumble around with in my hand to see if I could actually do it. And it seemed doable, and I didn't have a lot of EHO stuff at the time. I just had like 3 copier paper boxes from my teen years.
Right.
And so I sold that all off. It went pretty quick, and started building a layout. And it was a multi-level. It was actually featured in Model Railroad Planning in 2005.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
And the article was about the fact that I was taking railroad valuation maps and I was printing them out at full size for N scale, putting them directly on my bench work and laying the track right on top of them. So the track was exactly where the track was. And that went pretty well. And even though I never got to scenery with that layout, we were already doing operating sessions. And I had about a dozen people that would come over, like once a month, and we'd run, and it was doing well. And then I'm getting static. Are you hearing all right?
Yeah, I'm hearing the static, but I'm hearing you okay.
Okay. So I got to a point where I had to cut in the last level. So I went without operating for about 4 months while I spliced in this one connection. And when we went to have the next op session, trains were derailing everywhere, but it was crazy. And it was like a train would be cruising along at a nice speed, and then all of a sudden it was like the locomotive would hit a brick wall and it would buckle and bounce, and you'd dump a 50-car train on its side.
Right.
And I'm checking the gauge of the wheels, and they're fine. Finally looked at the switches, and I couldn't get an NMRA gauge to go through the frogs. I'm like, what the heck is going on here?
Right.
So I started checking all over the layout, and in that period of like 4 or 5 months, the frogs literally expanded and closed up on like 120 turnouts.
Expanded?
They expanded, and basically that particular brand of switch, they stamped the metal that made the frog was stamped, and there were 2 people on this one Pensy list I was on at the time that were metallurgists, and they said that depending on what kind of metal you use and what process you used, stamped metal has the capability, what he used the term relax, that over time it can relax. Well, mine all relaxed, and it wasn't pretty because I had like 120 of them installed, and I had cut back all the diverging routes to make it closer track spacing. And I literally sat on that problem for about 6 months trying to decide what the heck to do because I did not want to replace 120 turnouts.
No.
Um,
That must have
the
been incredibly frustrating.
Oh my God, it was crazy. I had like 6 cases of Flex Track installed on this layout. It 8 years of work. But I contacted the manufacturer and they were kind of like in disbelief. There's nothing wrong. Can you send us a sample? Which I did. The online people, others were like, "Oh, you're full of it." Well, I did a video and posted it online of taking this track gauge. It got to the frogs and didn't want to go through, and I could force it into the frog, and then I could turn the switch upside down and the gauge wouldn't fall out.
Really?
I'm like, that's too tight, guys.
Yeah.
So, manufacturer in question bought back all the track.
Wow.
So, they first wanted to just replace the turnouts, and I made the decision to switch back to HO, and that's kind of for 2 reasons. One is when I originally switched to N scale, it was like 6 months before the HO scale sound revolution started. Broadway Limited wasn't out yet. If I had known that was coming, I never would have switched in the first place.
Right.
But I mean, I got to give the N scalers credit. There's a ton you can do in it, and there's some great Pensy modelers in N scale. Klaus Schlund, Doug Nelson, a couple of John Dry. They're building locomotives from scratch in N scale, and it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I buy everything ready to run. You're lucky if you can get me to put in a drop-in decoder. But with everything that changed in the industry, when the layout became like a loss, I decided to rip it out and switch back to HO. So I sold off the whole N scale collection, and that took about a year. And in the meantime, the kids had gotten older and they weren't using this family room that they claimed that they needed, like not at all.
Right.
Like it's in the basement. There's spiders and all that stuff. So, I made a comment to my wife about, would you care if I, ran a shelf around the perimeter of this room because then I could at least have a longer run.
Right.
And she made the mistake of saying, "Oh, you can have the whole room. Nobody uses it." So she only had to say that once. So I had a wall that was built to separate the original train room, so I had to rip that down, rip the layout out, and in the process of ripping the layout out, I fell backwards on the concrete and managed to break my elbow and my wrist.
Oh my goodness gracious!
Oh, it's a full contact hobby. I'm telling you. How'd you break that? Oh, I was model railroading. So that took some recovery, and but it gave me the time to really come up with a plan that I liked, and I started construction in 2010.
Okay, and so you broke your elbow and your wrist.
Yeah, to add insult to injury, it was carrying pieces of the old layout out to burn. So I mentioned that there was a separate room that the layout was in. I picked up a piece of layout in the room and was kind of turning 90 degrees as I was backing up, and my foot caught a 2x4 that was on the ground, so I started falling backwards. And I knew the door opening was there, so I knew I was going to go through the door opening. So I threw the piece of layout I was holding away from me, and I spun to try to catch myself, but I didn't get all the way around. And I went down directly on my elbow, and then my wrist smacked really hard. And that was the biggest fall I've ever had. And I mean, I just laid there for about, I don't know, maybe half a minute saying, that really hurt. And I had a fire burning outside because I've been burning for a couple hours. So I went up, took a pain pill, went out to tend the fire for a while. So, I'm not going to add anything to the fire. Just put some ice on this. Pain pill wasn't really helping. Came back in. It's a Sunday. My wife's like, if you need to go to the ER, we really ought to do that. And I'm like, no, I'm going to give it a little longer. So I went out and mowed the lawn. I had a riding mower, so I did it with one arm. And I came back in, and she's like, you're not any better, are you? And I'm like, no, we better go. So we went and x-rayed it, and they're like, yeah, you broke your elbow, you broke your wrist. I'm like, great. I got through my childhood without breaking anything, and now I go and break this stuff. Model railroading.
Yeah. And that would hurt. I know somebody else that broke their elbow, and I don't think is it possible that anything else hurts as much as breaking your elbow.
The doctors told me that's one of the hardest bones in the body, and I had these 2 stress fractures, but what was really frustrating, I couldn't bend my wrist. I had to go through rehab for that, and they got the full range of motion back. But yeah, that is frustrating.
Holy mackerel! So, what year was it? You so this is like 2006 or 7?
No, this is about 2009. So the N scale layout was already dead and cut up in pieces, and it was before I started building the HO.
Okay. So what job wise? Are you still working? Where was the last? Oh yeah, you were working for the textbook company.
Yeah, so that went to. So that was during while I was at an N scale.
Right.
The publishing company ended in 2005.
Okay.
I got laid off because most of the work had gone overseas.
Okay.
They were doing most of the work, and the people that are doing the actual page layup are in India, so they didn't need tech support back here. So I was out of a job, and at that time, a lot more people had taken IT training and got certifications. So it was a mess for me because for one given job, I was hearing from employers that they were getting like 200 applicants, and weeding through 100 resumes for one job, they were literally making 2 stacks, one with certifications and one without. Because a certification, while maybe you can't handle the real world, it shows that you at least passed a test.
Yeah.
So you can do something.
Yeah.
So they were putting the people in the one stack that passed the test, and then they'd evaluate experience from there. Well, since I learned everything on my own, I didn't have any certifications.
Yeah.
But since I lost my job because the stuff went overseas, I lucked out and there was some federal money there. So the federal money paid for my certification. So I went and got a whole bunch of certifications. And from there, I went to a network security position at the Pennsylvania State Police.
Oh, you're with the police.
Yeah, I'm a civilian, not one of the guys with the red lights and the hats.
What should we do now? What should we do now, Bruce?
Well, you're the expert on local constabulary, so I defer to you.
This is where I slowly start backing out of the room.
Yeah.
Hopefully they don't notice me.
No worries.
Can you fix my tickets?
I can't fix your ticket.
Not that I ever get any.
No.
Okay, so now you're with the Pennsylvania State Police. That's a cool job.
Yes, I went into network security, which I had been doing some security as part of my previous job. So now I was full-time security, and watching the various tools that we have to prevent intrusion into our network from the outside. So it was kind of entry level for network security, and I was at the right place at the right time. That over the course of a few short years, I jumped up a couple levels, and I'm still there now.
That must be an interesting job then. You must feel pretty fortunate to have ended up there.
Yeah, it worked out really well, despite that layoff in the middle there. But I really enjoy it because, unlike a lot of IT things where you're doing repetitive tasks every single day,
right,
setting up a computer and all this stuff, security's different every single day. It's a different kind of attack coming at you from a different country, doing a different thing. So it's always trying to stay one step ahead.
That'd be like another whole show because I don't even. How do you realize there's an attack coming at you?
You're the tools that we use. they have dashboards, and you kind of develop a sense of a baseline. You know what normal traffic is like. Some things it'll sense and it'll say, hey, this appears wrong, and then you look at it and decide, whether it is or not. Other times you just notice visually a deviation from the baseline, and you dig into it a little bit. You read security blogs online, and they'll say, hey, something's trying to contact this.
Right.
And I'll go to my tools and I'll plug in the data and I'll see if any of it's hitting us. So yeah, you just got to be on your toes and be aware.
So you know what the crazy part of this is, don't you, Bruce?
No, but I'm sure you'll fill us in.
The place, the headquarters for the Pennsylvania State Police.
Yes.
You know where it is?
The place that doesn't exist?
Downtown Edders.
No, that's our disaster recovery bunker.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the headquarters is actually in Harrisburg. It's about 16 miles one way for me to drive to.
That's perfect.
But I can actually, if I had to, do my whole job from home.
All right, but do you mostly go into the office?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so what did you say the disaster recovery bunker is where?
That's the joke. Because my whole team, we can work remotely.
Okay.
So, we just joke that, we're going to work in the bunker in Edders.
Okay, and how many guys would be in this department working on this job?
I've got a half dozen.
Okay.
Working the unit doing, firewalls, remote access, disk encryption, stuff like that.
I have a friend of mine, David Holmes, who works for a company called, I think, Force 5 in Seattle. And anyways, he travels the whole world, working on security for companies for computers. That's a huge industry now. I don't understand any of it because there's a bunch of guys over here trying to bust in and a bunch of guys over here trying to keep them out. It's almost like a giant video game.
Yep.
So all right, so now you've decided to switch to HO. Your elbow is healed. You had time to plan your layout. So how big is your layout then?
Well, it doesn't consume the whole space yet. But the room overall is approximately 24 by 32.
Okay.
But it's irregularly shaped, and I got to go around HVAC equipment and U-shaped stairs that come down. So I had some design challenges. But I came up with a plan that works. It took about a year to come up with that plan.
Okay, and did you do the plan yourself, or?
I did.
And what is unbelievably amazing is that your layout has something in common with me and Bruce.
What's that?
We too are irregularly shaped.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm irregularly shaped.
So okay.
That's why I didn't like that comment about the spandex thing from the Kelly questions. Like, no, you don't want to see that.
I don't understand that whole thing. It suddenly has dawned on me in the last little while, listening to Kelly questions as I edit them. It's like, why is the superheroes always wearing tights and their underwear on the outside? I mean, seriously. Batman wore tights and his underwear on the outside and a mask and a cape. I mean, if that guy came down to you and said, it's okay, citizen, I'll look after you, you'd be like, yeah, sure, buddy. Give me a guy in it.
But
give me a guy.
On the other hand, it's okay when it's Wonder Woman.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a whole different story altogether.
Well,
yeah. Like, duh. So, okay. So while your elbow's healing, you're planning this layout, and you haven't got. Did you? So you haven't filled all the room yet. So you're obviously building it in stages or something.
Well, I'm modeling Lewistown, Pennsylvania, and the Pennsy main line between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh is, for the most part, impractical to model. It's a 4-track main line, and 4 tracks, when you get the curves and stuff, it takes a lot of space. So, I made up the traditional list of givens and druthers, and I really wanted main line running because I just like the busy 4-track main. But I also wanted a lot of switching. You don't get a lot of switching on the main line. So I was looking for locales where I can kind of have the best of both worlds. And I came up with Lewistown. Lewistown was approximately halfway, still is, it's halfway between Harrisburg and Pittsburgh. And it was also the original terminus of the Pennsylvania Railroad back in the 1850s. and it's really a neat location. So it's got a 4-track main line going by it, but then it has its own yard to serve 2 branches that go out the back side of the yard and spread out through town and the countryside. The one branch is like 11 miles long, and the other one just went to another town about 30 miles away. But this particular 11-mile branch had a ton of switching on it. I found out that there was a quarry back there that was putting out 50 carloads a day of stone, and there was a steel mill that was doing making railroad car wheels and axles, still does today, that at the time was putting out about 30 loads a day. So you got 80 loads a day out of 2 of the industries, and there's a ton of other industries. Visco's had a big rayon plant there that was switched twice a day. So there was a ton of activity that I could have on the switching part of the layout on the branches, yet I could still get the main line activity going by. So basically the layout, I started building the main level, which is, waist high,
Right.
has the 4-track main line that encircles the entire room. But about half of it is covered up and is staging. I've got 20 tracks for staging that are about 18 to 20 feet long. And there's basically, for each main line track, there's 4 to 6 staging tracks, so that I can queue up a variety of trains to run on any particular track. Now on the Pensy, they typically had passenger trains running on the outside tracks, and they had freights on the inside tracks. So you do the math, I could have 3 or 4 passenger trains for each of the mainline passenger tracks, and the same with freight. Well, when you look at the makeup of the trains using the prototypical Pensy paperwork, you can see certain patterns, even though there were scheduled freight trains, but there might be 3 a day that had very similar makeups, like a block of stock cars, a block of reefers, and then a block of interchange traffic. And although they had different eventual destinations, they all look the same when they pass Lewistown. So I can have that train go by Lewistown 3 times in an operating session, but it represents 3 different trains.
Okay.
You look at passenger trains. Some of them were all Pullmans. Some of them were heavy in baggage and express with maybe a coach or 2 at the end. So I found the similar makeups. And again, I can run one train multiple times to represent different trains. So the operating scheme I came up with, there's 2 alternating scenarios. The first one is 7 a.m. in the morning to 3 in the afternoon. And the other one is 3 in the afternoon until 7 p.m., 5-minute break, and then you pick up again at 3 a.m. till 7 a.m. And during that time, we're actually running all the main line trains that the Pensy ran on that territory. Now I'm going to back up a second and explain that a little further. The level of interaction of an operator in an op session to run those trains is minimal.
Right.
There's people in this area that don't want to get caught up in switching because for whatever reason they're terrified of operations. So they can come in here and just run a train around a loop and be thrilled with that. So that's the perfect job for them. If I don't have enough people at an op session to do that, I can actually run it programmatically with JMRI. Because of the way I have my detection section set up, I can actually have a route set itself at a certain time and have a train run itself around and go back to staging, park it, change the switches, and run a different train. So I've got a lot of options there. Where the operating part really comes in is the classification yard at Lewistown. There's 2 trains in each direction that come off the main line and terminate or originate at Lewistown. So there's going to be a constant feed of cars into that yard. It's going to keep 2 yard masters busy all the time. And then there's a number of locals that go out from there onto the branch line. The branch line, there's a section called the Lewistown Secondary, which on the layout is about 25 feet long and has spots for probably 24 cars. Very busy place. So there's some interesting switching there. Then you go up a helix to the top level, which is the Milroy branch. That was the 11-mile long branch on the prototype. and it goes the whole way around the room, a combination of single and double track. It's about 120 feet long from end to end, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 switching locations right now. So when I said I didn't fill the whole room, there's going to be a teardrop peninsula eventually added in the middle on the top level, which is going to add 3 more switching locations per the prototype.
Okay.
So there's quite a bit that'll be going on.
Yeah, and so you.
How many people do you figure that will keep busy?
Easily 10. I think I could probably accommodate 13 or 14.
All right.
We haven't gotten there yet because I'm kind of still in the QC testing, making sure the track works good. We're having what I call run sessions rather than op sessions, which is just kind of like, just move stuff around, let me know where the problems are. I think we'll actually start op sessions around January.
Okay, so what's QC session? You said QC?
Quality control.
Quality control. You see, I don't do very well with acronyms.
Yeah, okay.
To me, it could have been quilts and chocolate.
Yeah, so I've had a couple open houses.
Yes.
And my main line, I'll fire up 4 trains on the 4 mains, and then I'll put one up on the branch line was a stub end, but I have a continuous connection that's hidden just for open houses. So I can run 5 trains by myself. So the test is to have friends over to test like all the different turnouts into the industry, stuff like that.
Right.
So from a running straight through standpoint, it's already running pretty well.
Okay. So, and often you post about your open houses on our Facebook page.
Yes, sir.
And we religiously report about that, several months after the open house. Because we're constantly behind on our viewer posts.
We got a big one coming up in November if this gets out in time.
Do you?
Yeah.
How do you, like, are you part of a group of open houses, or you just have your own open house?
Yes. So I heard about an organized group of open houses back in the late 90s. And this is down in the Philadelphia, Wilmington, Delaware, New Jersey area. And every year they were putting together like 60 or 70 open house dates during the month of November. And they would put out this big printed schedule about a month ahead of time. And I said, hey, wouldn't it be neat if we just got a couple carloads of guys and went down there and checked this out? So we did. In the first year, we had like 5 carloads of guys and went from our area down there.
Right.
And took in a whole bunch of really phenomenal layouts. And we made it an annual event to go on this trek. And then somewhere around 2002, 2003, I'm like, all right, it's kind of time for us to give back a little bit. So what I did is I organized a tour in our area during November that we advertised to all those owners saying, hey, if you want to come a little farther west, come up our way. We'll do it all on the same weekend for convenience.
Right.
So we started doing that then. And then here about 5 years ago, the Susquehanna division of the NMRA wanted to do a division-wide open house. Now, the Susquehanna division is like 32 counties of Pennsylvania, and my tour was covering 7 or 8 counties. So it was a very small subset of that.
Right.
And working with them, I said, okay, we'll add that and expand. And I got some help. And so I was running this Susquehanna division tour concurrently with this group out of Philly that was covering Philly, South Jersey, all of Delaware, and a few in Maryland. So that went a couple years. And then the guy that was organizing that tour wanted to retire. He was doing it for 25 years. He wanted out, and he was having trouble finding somebody to take over. So, I contacted him after, a couple of his appeals, fell on deaf ears. Nobody was expressing interest.
Right.
And he didn't want to see it die. And I'm like, all right, I'd be willing to take it over, but I need to computerize it because it's getting so big. We can't do it with a spreadsheet and whatnot. So we need to computerize it and have regional coordinators where they can enter the events. And I just kind of act as the publisher and control the machine. So he said, great. So I took over that. So now we have the website, themodelrailroadopenhouse.com.
Okay.
So treat it as one word, themodelrailroadopenhouse.com. And last year was the first year that I ran it, and we had 120 openings over 4 weekends. And
Wow.
literally is about 2/3 of Pennsylvania, um, southern half of New Jersey. Actually, I guess that was it last year. And then this year, for the first time, we have North Jersey coming on, which is the Garden State Division, and also the South Mountain Division, which includes parts of more Pennsylvania, parts of Maryland, Virginia, and West Virginia. So it's kind of like an all-year task to work with those regional coordinators to enter new layouts into the database. But then from September 1st to September 20th, the regional coordinators work with the layout owners to get their dates and times, and we enter them into the system. And then on October 1st, we publish the schedule on our website. So,
and then did people just sign up for the layouts they want to go see, and that's how it works? Or
basically, everything is on the website that they need to get there. The address is there, so they can just pick and choose. There's descriptions out there, the scale's noted, so they can pick and choose which ones they go to. We try to take certain weekends and geographically group layouts. So if somebody wants to go to, say, Central Pennsylvania, then we'll have a bunch of them open the third weekend of November. Clubs happen to love Thanksgiving weekend, so they do that. But we try to have some semblance of order. We'll provide a Google map that shows all the layouts open on any particular day, so you can plan that way. The website has a neat thing that if you take the time to log in, because you can see the layout listings without logging in, but if you do log in, you can create a custom itinerary. You can say, I want to go to that one, and that one. And then it'll create an iCal invitation that you can put on your smartphone that'll give you links for your GPS right on your smartphone. So it's high tech.
Yeah, I'm just looking at it now, and it's like it is high tech.
Yeah. Now there's some events you'll see out there now, especially if you go forward to December. But all of our events for November are hidden until October 1st.
And why is that?
Just because the schedule can change, and we want to make sure that what we put out is as accurate as it can be. We discourage people from changing, removing, or adding times after October 1. Because if they would like print the site out now and then something cancels, there's no way to notify them, hey, something changed.
Okay, so I'm looking at the first is mainline hobby weekend layout open houses.
Yeah, that's not us. That's a hobby shop down in Blue Ridge Summit. They do an open house tour every October, and the gig there is you have to go to their store to get the layout guide. So if you bounce ahead to November, you're going to see we've got a fine scale railroading expo in Altoona that's showing there for early November. But you'll see a whole slew of open houses suddenly appear on October 1st. I think right now, just for the part that I'm responsible for the Susquehanna division, I've already got 79 dates. So I still have yet to get all of New Jersey and that area of West Virginia and Maryland.
So have you ever listened to our podcast?
Absolutely.
Okay, so by now you realize that I'm unbelievably confused.
Now, I think you'll understand it all if I just bring up CV29.
Yeah, exactly. There you go, CV29.
You'll feel a lot better about the open house.
All right. So okay. So I'm looking for. Okay. So I'm on your event calendar, event list.
Yes.
So I'm looking for open houses in October.
Well, the tour will be in November.
Okay.
So October 1, there's events that are out there in our database that aren't what we call published. They're there, they're ready to go. I just have to flip a switch, and all of a sudden November's going to light up with like 100 and some open houses.
Okay, but what about in October? There doesn't seem to be. There's like
we don't do October. We do this event every year in November.
Okay.
Because it's National Model Railroad Month.
Okay.
And then there's a few that I do list for December and January that are local to me. They're around here. So I just kind of helped them out for publicity.
So just to make it simple, then this layout tour thing is basically primarily a November thing.
Yes.
Okay. And so you don't publish it until October because there's that many changes, is there?
There can be. When the original guy that was running it, it was very much a paper process, and they had to start getting dates and times from people back in August. And, it's kind of tough and impractical to say, hey, Mr. Layout Owner, it's August. Can you commit to a date in November? But with it computerized, I can shorten that amount of time down dramatically. So I don't even start asking till September 1st. So I've cut a whole month out of the process since last year. So they have until the 20th. And then I've got some manual tasks to do with Google Maps to get the dates all mapped out so people can see, graphically what's where on a given day. So I need a little bit of time. And then October 1st, I flipped the switch. Although, quite honestly, I think last year I did it like on September 29th or something like that.
Right.
So, and I'll announce it on Facebook. There's a companion Facebook page, which is more the public portal for year-round stuff. And there's a link to that from the Model Railroad Open House page.
Where's the link to the Facebook page?
If you click on the home button,
Uh-huh.
you see then you click on home, and there's a big thing that says like us on Facebook. That takes you right to the Facebook
There
page.
you go. It says there's a big thing right there. It says like us on Facebook.
So you go out there, it'll remind you of when we're presenting the schedule.
I should put something like that on my website.
I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, but I mean, I should put a like us on Facebook on my website, but I will also put the Model Railroad Open House. I've thought about trying to put some sort of a schedule together, but then, of course, there's already a million things to do when you have a podcast, and I only have so much time or energy or enthusiasm would even be So, have you been to Ken McQuarrie's layout?
Absolutely.
He'd be a great guy to interview as well. Not as much fun as you'd, but he'd be a great guy to interview.
He would. He's got a neat layout. It's based on the prototype very much.
Yeah.
He built a barn just to house this layout.
Yes.
So like the dispatchers on the lower level and the layouts upstairs, and he has the world's largest DCC throttle.
Yes, I've heard of that. Yeah.
You heard of it? Yep.
Does he have any kind of a website?
No.
No, does he have any kind of a Facebook page?
I don't believe so.
No. Huh, that's interesting. Okay, so how many people are going to take this layout tour? Do you have any way of keeping track of that?
I don't know. When I mentioned in the early years, I was just doing it around here, like 7 or 8 counties.
Right.
I would follow up with the owners then and say, hey, do me a favor, email me an estimate of how many people you had. And I get anywhere from 20 to 50, and one club would say they had like 80. It's impractical to do it with the number of layouts that we have now. So we're not going to have any real good metrics, I don't think. Unless people comment back to me and say, hey, this really sucked this year, or, that sort of thing. So, yeah, I'm not going to try to measure it because the whole thing is to make this as easy as possible.
Right. And so there's no cost involved for the people that want to go.
That's correct.
It's just free, and it's just jump on board and have fun with it.
Well, actually, I should say there might be some cost.
Okay.
You go out for a day visiting 10 layouts, and then you go home and you scratch your head and you say, I got to go to the hobby shop and buy a bunch of stuff.
Well, exactly. So is it's during the month of November? It's pretty much layouts every weekend then.
Every weekend.
Wow. And a total of how many layouts in November again?
Well, I count them by openings because some layouts open more than once.
Sure.
Last year we had 120 openings.
Wow.
And this year we've added the Garden State Division, which is all of North Jersey, and we've added the South Mountain Division. And I don't know that they're going to have too many because the guy that was going to coordinate it passed away. And I didn't find out until about 2 months ago. So we kind of jumped through hoops to get a new coordinator on board.
Right.
So they're going to have some. I'm not sure how many. But There's already talk about adding the Chesapeake division, which is most of Maryland, for next year.
So what kind of
Wow.
distance are we talking from Harrisburg to South Jersey?
About 2.5 hours.
Okay, and from Harrisburg to Maryland is not that far, is it?
Now you can get down there to some of the better layouts in about an hour. Well, about 45 minutes.
So people could travel, spend a whole month doing this.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. What we need to do is a little short podcast. Maybe next week or something, we'll do a little short one that I can edit and put out right away for you.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean these bigger ones, I kind of slot them in sequence. So this probably won't be out till after Christmas, but because I'm actually getting ahead.
Well, I know you do a lot of editing.
So. I don't. Why do you think that? I actually we last when was it, Bruce? Last Thursday, we talked. We had an interview with Christina Zambri and Charlie Getz and a bunch of people.
Gordy Robinson.
Yeah, from over home, United Kingdom, and it was 2 hours long, and there was zero editing to do.
Awesome.
Yeah, so tonight there'll be a little bit. We've had some fits and starts on this one, but some of them, I tell you, with the new Sexy Voicinator 2000, it goes pretty smooth nowadays. So we should do like a little like 10 or 15 minute thing next week or something. We'll do something, and that way I'll put it out right away. It won't take me hardly any time to do it, and it'll give you some publicity.
That'd be great.
All right.
Yeah.
And it'll only cost $200.
Do I get to stay at the Ritz again?
Yeah,
Yes,
exactly.
absolutely.
Now, you know what we got to talk about is Patreon, and how much you don't like Patreon, just for fun.
No, so it's all good. It's all good.
I know, but you know what? I think I'm actually changing it a bit because the thing, it's fun to talk to you because you're a good guy, and and that's just the whole thing. I think the fascinating part about this podcast for me has been I literally started it just for fun.
Mm-hmm. I get that.
Strictly for fun. I thought, this would be kind of a cool thing to do. Talk to a few people and put it out there. And literally thought, I had no idea what I thought. Like, I literally thought, some people, I'm very much of, I don't know what the proper word is, but I love making things grow. So I'm very much about numbers and what kind of impact you have. So, I thought it was going to start out where I'd have a Facebook page or I'd have 50 downloads. And then, in August of 2014, I'd have 50 downloads. And then in September of 2014, I'd have 89 downloads. And as the years went by, I'd eventually get to a point where some months I'd have as many as 300 and 400 downloads a month. Which
and you found that it took on a life of its own.
Yeah, and then the thing just took on probably a lot like your model railroad open house thing. It seems very, probably the same thing. I mean, never in a million zillion years, Bruce, you can bear witness to this for everybody. Never in a million zillion years did I ever say to you within 3 years we'll be approaching 250,000 downloads.
I remember how excited we got when we hit 10,000.
Yeah, exactly. What were you going to say?
Well, your success with AML is kind of like my own website about the Pennsylvania Railroad. It took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
I started it as a project just to learn how to do the website programming, and that was it. And I almost, from a pool of 3 or 4 subjects, picked the subject kind of randomly, and ended up I was like the first one out there with a Pensy website, and I started having people say, "Hey, if I send you a PDF file, can you post it?" And I went from this tiny little website that at the time was on America Online to now I'm at a point where I'm serving 1 million pages a year all over the globe.
Yeah,
Wow.
and it's important for people to realize. I think people lose scope of the fact that because you can do these things in your own home, and you can and doing them is much easier than it would have been years ago. I mean, it's your website is no different than my podcast. It was just something to do.
Yeah.
And you were very gratified in the early days that a few people paid attention.
Yep.
And you could have never fathomed the result you have. I mean, it's like your ability to work the computer and organize the model railroad open house. I mean, it's staggering to listen to you describe it. I mean, it's staggering to like I'm serious. If you want to, next week, one evening, we'll very quickly do 15 or 20 minutes about it, and I'll punch it up and put it out there the next day or the day after, because 20-minute podcast is like super easy to process.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And whatever we can do to help would be fun. It'll be a fun thing to do. That would be a fun thing to do because it takes literally no time at all, or very little time.
Probably a good time, since I just talked about it, mention my Pensy website if anybody's interested. It's called Keystone Crossings, but it's at PensyRR.com.
Yes, and I wanted to talk to you about that. PensyRR.com. What a cool domain name. And you must have got that like forever ago, did you?
Yeah, we're coming up on 20 years next May. So I'll have to have some kind of celebration or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
I'll say 20 years. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Well, and that must have been just after Al Gore invented the internet.
Yeah.
What's the most rewarding thing of being part of the internet in model railroading for you?
Well, the one thing that my wife abuses me about a lot is, we'll go somewhere, who knows where, and I might be wearing a railroad shirt or something, and they see Pensy and they're like, "Oh, you like the Pensy?" And they introduce themselves, and say I'm Jerry Britton, and they're like, "Are you the Jerry Britton?" So my wife always refers to herself as being married to the Jerry Britton.
Well, now I'm friends with the Jerry Britton.
There was a funny story though about that. Is there's a guy by the name of Bennett Levin out of Philadelphia who restored 2 Pennsylvania Railroad E8 locomotives, and they get run on excursions a lot. Absolutely beautiful, but they did like their maiden voyage back around 2002, and they ran through Harrisburg. And there's a location I knew they were going to pass that I thought was going to be pretty good for photography. There's a Y, and I used to live near the Y, and I knew the whole inside of the Y was railroad property, but when I got there, all the signs were gone. And I'm like, oh, I bet if I go in there and I get caught, I can plead ignorance.
Right.
So I drive back inside the Y, and I'm waiting, and the darn train is only 2 miles away, but it's fueling up at the fuel dock. So right before the train comes, in comes the Norfolk Southern Police.
Right.
I'm like, crap. So he comes up and he asks me for my identification. He goes back to his car, and I'm like, son of a gun, So he comes back out and he's like, "Can I ask you what you're doing here?" And I started telling him about all this trains coming by. He knew about the train because he was patrolling the whole line.
Right.
But he played dumb. He's like, "Well, what are you doing here?" And I said about this train coming and the significance of it and all that. And so the train I can start seeing the headlight now. And I'm thinking, all right, is he going to kick me out? What's he going to do? And he says, go ahead, get your pictures. And then just keep in mind, this is railroad property. And I was kind of dumbfounded that was it. And he hands me my license and he goes, "I've been on your website." So that was a get out of jail free card.
There you go. Yeah, and just I'm looking at your website, and just here's the fun fact: 20,781,254 pages served since June 1, 1997.
Yeah.
20 million. Wow.
20,781,000.
I actually, because I'm a computer geek, I actually ran the whole thing out of my basement for a number of years, and then using a commercial provider just got too cheap. I couldn't, I switched. I was doing $120 a month I was spending out of my house, and it got to where you could go to an external provider for a couple hundred for a whole year.
Right. Okay.
So between and I just changed my provider here about 4 months ago. But I get a ton of disk space. They do all the infrastructure support for me. I do some programming and all that, but all that plus whatever software licenses that I have, I'm only spending about $500 a year now. And I put a PayPal support this site, and I get a couple people donate. Some people come back every year and donate. That helps. But this ties into your Patreon thing. The one thing I made the decision to do is a couple years ago, I monetized it, and I use ads that literally pays for the cost of the site.
Okay, right.
So unfortunately, people have to put up with 3 ads per page. Some people can't stand it. I'm like, okay, you can get an ad blocker that'll just leave a blank space in the page there, but it pays for the site. And I've thought about, do I want to have an option where you pay and you get no ads? And I'm like, no, that's kind of cheesy too, and you got to track it and all that. So I get what you did, but because you're not a website, you can't display ads on an audio broadcast.
Yeah, and it was just yeah. Go ahead.
So what you did made perfect sense, and I absolutely don't begrudge that. You've got costs. You're buying some equipment. That all makes sense. I've got a kid that just got out of college, another one at college, and that is incredibly expensive right now.
Yeah.
So even $2 a month sounds like nothing, but it's like, yeah, and then there's Netflix, and then there's this,
Absolutely.
and then there's that. I personally just don't do it.
Absolutely.
But what got me frustrated was that every free broadcast you would talk about what happened in the Patreon broadcast. And I was like, okay, I feel like the kid in middle school that's getting picked on because they didn't get to go to the party on Saturday night, and Monday morning everybody's talking about the party.
Right.
So I didn't listen for a while because as much as I like the podcast, I like it kind of
sure
torqued me a little.
Right, yeah.
And but I started binging, and I'm catching up again. And I will say that those references aren't there the way they used to be. So you've definitely improved. I don't know where you are today. I'm only up to May. I think the Stanley Cup playoffs are still going on.
Well, and when I do references, it's for fun, right? I mean, so everybody understands. I think the hardest thing for me has been to understand is that I only ever did this for myself.
Yeah.
And the fact that it became so popular, just to me, is just well, that was a mistake. I like to talk to people. So then I started to record it. And then people, not you at all, I'm not talking about you at all, but some people started to kind of become demanding. And I'm thinking, no, I'm sitting in my underwear in my basement doing this. I have stuff to do. I don't need so for me, I thought, you know what, the Patreon thing is perfect because those who really want to be involved, okay, I'm going to really point myself in that direction, and then if they want to buy, because I've been in self-employed my whole life, so that's what I understand. If you want to pay me to do something, I will be there for you 100%.
Well, it's like when I started my website. That for the first year or so, it was on my America Online account where you got 5 megabytes of free space.
Yeah.
And I real quickly got into the situation where I had to delete stuff before I could add stuff. Now I'm up to 7 gigabytes of stuff.
Yeah, well, and
this isn't video. This is just all text and PDF. That's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, and I'm interested in your opinion on, now that we're talking about this particular subject, I'm fascinated by the web and the social media and all this stuff. I'm fascinated by everything that happens. I'm going to make another change to the podcast, the Patreon part of it again. And it's kind of I'm not trying to be, I don't even know how to describe it. I mean, maybe Bruce can help me when I get to that part. But it's I understand people have opinions. But on the other side of the coin, I don't really care what your opinion is because I started it for myself. So it's if you want to ride in my car, I'd probably prefer if you didn't spill your milkshake on the floor. It's so I mean.
So here's an idea.
And a little gas money will help too.
Yeah. So here's a little idea thinking outside the box. you can get those donate to the project PayPal icons and throw that on your website. What would happen if you did that and said, "Hey, the more we get in donations, the fewer episodes will be on Patreon"? Or actually, I guess that won't work because you have a storage space issue.
Yeah. But that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm interested in your opinion about publishing and model railroad publishing and the internet. Like, to me, like we had this discussion with the president of the NMRA, and I mean, to me, paper publishing is like it's going the way of the dodo bird, whether you like it or not. I mean,
And it ought to.
what's that?
And it ought to.
And
There's no reason to print this stuff.
yeah, like I know you're an NMRA member. I saw you got an award not that long ago. I saw a picture somewhere that you posted of an award you got.
Last May, I got my volunteer AP certificate.
Okay, all right. So you must be reasonable.
And then here, a couple weeks ago, I got my materials submitted for. I'm doing things a little backwards. I'm getting my golden spike.
Right.
But I'm also getting the electrical and dispatcher APs. I should have those certificates in a couple weeks.
Okay, so you got your volunteer AP. So you must be reasonably involved in your local region and divisions.
Yep.
And so where do you see, not in particular the NMRA, but where do you see, I'm interested in your opinions because you've done so much on the internet, where do you see the future of the hobby going in relation to the internet? I mean, to me, the hobby's growing like crazy because it's so available for everybody now.
Yeah.
Like, so available. Like I can do this in my house, and I can produce it. If I'm prepared to spend some money on equipment, it can be better and better. And it's like I say, I think it's a great idea to do a quick little 15-minute podcast about your layout tour, and it'll be interesting to see if you get any reaction from it. And
it would.
To me, it's just it's kind of like being Lewis and Clark and going west and just kind of seeing what happens. And so, what is your opinion on the future of the internet and model railroading and the future of the hobby in general?
I think the internet's key to everything. If you are building a layout and you need some information, the stuff that's out there that you can get off sites like mine for the Pensy, you can get employee timetables, you can get track charts, you can get valuation maps, roster information. So just pure data from the original railroad is out there. You can go to like the Hagley Museum in Delaware. You can go online there, and they've got literally thousands of photographs from the Pennsylvania Railroad archives available there. There's Yahoo groups that are topical, where you can join groups and post questions, and other people answer it, and you can talk about literally anything about the prototype, about modeling. We have a group called PRR Pro, where it is every 6 months we pick a different car project to build, and everybody builds it together, and we share each other's ideas about how to go about scratch building this or doing this for this resin kit, stuff like that.
Wow.
And we've done like 20 some projects like that over the past couple of years.
Does that have a website, that PRR Pro?
PRR Pro is a Yahoo group.
Okay.
If you go to Yahoo, I don't know if you're familiar with the groups. They're email-based groups,
right,
but they have a web page to kind of tie everything together. But you can search on any railroad and you'll find a number of lists, but that's one of the key ones for the Pensy. But you look at internet for online ordering. The whole manufacturing process pretty much has gone to pre-ordering, and the companies that are taking the pre-orders are online, so that's convenient, and you're getting fewer and fewer local hobby shops. So some people, their closest hobby shop is 2 hours away, so you need the internet for that. What was I thinking? Talk about the magazines. When a print magazine comes out, the news that's in it is 2 or 3 months old because of the production time.
Yeah.
You get these online mags like Model Railroad Hobbyist, which is a fine publication. They're free. You download them. Sure, they're paid by ads, but it's new information. The news isn't up to the minute, but it's within the past month anyway. And then for those who really know how to look for it, you can get product announcements the day something's announced.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so the one thing I do is I'm checking a couple sites every day for Pensy announcements, and when something gets announced, I post it on my blog.
Right.
So people have the opportunity to know that's announced that day.
Yeah, and the other thing people can't lose sight of is just because it's so easy to access the internet doesn't mean there's people on the backside looking to make, using it as a money. Like, the world still turns on, if I make money, then I spend it somewhere else. And, that's
Yeah.
like a lot of people, I think, lose sight of the fact that as they use the internet, they're the users, and, you still have to have TV. You don't have to have stars and hosts and commercials and everything to keep it going.
Yeah. So the other thing that I started about 15 years ago, time-wise, I got to watch. I'm getting a little heavy in November. We always do this November survey where I put up a survey online on my website of Pensy modelers, asking them some demographics. What era do they model? What do they model? Mainline, branch line, freelance? What age are they? What brand of DCC do they run? But then I go through all these categories of what Pensy diesel locomotive would you most like to see manufactured? What steam locomotive? What electric locomotive? What boxcar? What head-end passenger car? And there's about 15 categories, and I'll list all the ones that haven't been done yet. So we'll get like 100 to 150 people that respond to that, which really isn't enough to be scientific, but they're all Pensy modelers and they're commenting on Pensy stuff.
Right.
So we started this about 15 years ago, and I started sending it to manufacturers, and I occasionally get a thank you, or I get a little bit of feedback from certain manufacturers. Usually I don't hear anything, but the neat thing is by the next year, almost without fail, the top item in every category has been announced by one of the manufacturers that I sent it to.
Really?
So that's kind of neat to see.
Yeah, that's for sure. That's cool. That is very cool. All that stuff is cool. And you said you had a model railroad. You had a business selling stuff for a while?
Yeah, so I started back like 87. I was doing computer consulting on the side, and then I got involved in doing some JMRI consulting for somebody. And I can't even remember now what the electronics were, but they wanted to get some electronics to have JMR control, and they asked if I could get it for them because it was a computer related thing. I'm like, yeah, okay. So then I started selling more electronics that were related to model railroading, and the next thing you knew, I was all in selling trains online as a side business. So I was doing, I was specializing in Pensy. I was not doing like every road name. I was doing Pensy stuff, but literally the full gamut. I had customers all over the world. When Broadway Limited came out with the original run of their M1 steam locomotive, I had a third party tell me that I had their largest single order, and they actually drop shipped it to me from the factory. Didn't even go through Florida.
Wow.
So I definitely put through some product, and that was going well. Actually, it was going very well, and it had the advantages to me. But the problem was I didn't have any time left for modeling.
Right.
And this was when I just realized that, okay, the N-scale layout's toast. I want to build an HO. I felt like I just lost 8 years, so I made a painful decision to just cut off the business. That's it. And, this layout is so much bigger than what I was working with before. I built it all myself. Now everything's running on the main straight through, and, we're going to start operating soon. So yeah, it's met its purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing. I think now in the digital age, it's so easy to send yourself off in so many different directions.
Yeah.
And you got to kind of pick and choose. Like, I mean, for me, I I like doing the podcast as much as a hobby as anything, but it's like you got to pick and choose. You got to do something. Anyways,
Yep.
we haven't even come close to covering everything, which means we'll have to talk to you again. This model railroad open house thing seems pretty cool. That seems cool, doesn't it, Bruce?
It is absolutely cool. It's mind-boggling cool.
Yeah, like I was looking at private tours here, and like so like Fine Scale Model Railroader Expo, they have their own private tour from that, eh? Like that's just a calendar you built.
Yeah, well, so the interesting thing about that is that expo occurs about every year and a half, and they go all around the Northeast. And they were up in New England, I think, last year. And this year they said, hey, we're going to be in Altoona. It's the first week of November.
Right.
And I went to the website and looked at it. I'm like, oh, great. They want to organize a layout tour in the same territory where I'm already doing a layout tour. So I reached out to them and I said, look, we're kind of competing with each other. Are you looking for exclusivity, or would you care if other people came to the layouts that were open for you? Because here's the deal. If you're willing to open it to everybody, I'll do the tour for you, and you don't even have to work on it.
Wow.
And they're like, well, that sounds like a good idea. So, what they want is a tour for people driving on their way home on November 5th.
Right.
So what I did is, I mentioned earlier in the broadcast how I have geographically focused areas. So I focused on the area of that expo for that weekend. And then, as they get farther out from the expo, get closer to New York City, well, they're also going through the New Jersey area where we'll have layouts open too. I won't have the full count for another week yet, but that's how that came out. And then, the Pennsylvania Railroad Technical and Historical Society has a big annual meeting every year, and they want open houses. And typically every other year they come to the Harrisburg area, and I've been organizing those since like 2002 or something. So since I know everybody in the area.
Wow. So you just are like the guy that's organizing all the layouts and everything. What's the area? So it's everything on the eastern seaboard, as far north as South Jersey, and as far south as Maryland, maybe.
Yeah, it's like potentially 3 full states and parts of 3 others.
So,
I could see it getting a little bit bigger, but the problem you get beyond that is you lose the ability to have those geographic centers on different weekends, because at that point you just become a national listing service.
Yeah. Okay. So
you lose any capability of organization.
All right. I definitely think next week, if you're up for it, we should definitely do a little 15-minute. I'd be interested to see, number one, I'd be interested to see if it had any impact, if anybody, talked to you about it, from the podcast. Because I have, it's like something else, it's like I have no idea of tracking how many, because there was something I've come to realize lately is people come and they go, and they come and they go. And it's kind of like, like that's part of it. It's model railroading can lead you in so many different directions.
Yeah, well, like that podcast thing, if we do something like that, you're going to get publicity from me. But at the same time, I'll take the Facebook page for the Model Railroad Open House and mention, hey, we're on the Modeler's Life podcast, pointing people to you.
Yeah.
So see what happens to your likes that week, because it's really interesting. I look at the metrics on some of the Facebook pages that I run, and I cross post between them. And my normal posts on Facebook, when I make a blog entry on my website, it automatically posts to Twitter and my one Facebook page. And the typical blog post that goes on the Pennsylvania Railroad Facebook page, typically there's only about 100 to 120 people actually click on it to read the whole article.
Right.
And when I published the call for dates for the open house this year, it's up to like 2,900. It's like, whoa, what just happened here?
Yeah.
So if I post about the AML network, I'll be able to see how many people click through on that to read it.
I know. I'll be going along. I'll be looking. The one thing I like about having my website for the basis of it on Libsyn, this service called Libsyn, is, I get fairly decent statistics.
Yeah, the metrics.
Yeah, and it goes along. Is that what you call it? Is that what you call it? Metrics?
Yeah, in the industry they usually call it
All
metrics.
right. From now, let's remember that, Bruce. We're going to call it metrics from now on.
That's
Yes,
fine.
Yeah. Okay.
that's the hip. That's the hip
Yeah.
thing.
Let's be as hip as we can. We're nothing if not hip. What are you laughing at?
Oh, you're definitely hip.
But it'll go along, and because I've had anywhere from 1,000 downloads a day to 76 downloads a day, and
Yeah.
but then it'll go along, and all of a sudden it'll be a week where I haven't done much, and all of a sudden it'll spike to like a high number, and I'm thinking, well, somebody's put it somewhere, somebody's published it somewhere, and it spikes.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yep. They shared it somewhere else.
Yeah. All right. Well, we better stop here because it'll be interesting to see how far Stuart Sherling gets on this one.
He's almost got a round trip, and I'm thinking.
No, I don't think so. I think he's.
Well, maybe halfway at least.
No, I don't think so. I think he's an 8-hour, 10-hour guy. He's at least 8 hours or 6 or 8 hours a night. Because don't forget, he's hauling. The trip out is Stuart. We need to know more about this. But the trip out, he's got 2 full trailers. That's another crazy thing. When I was talking to him at our picnic, our barbecue, he was telling me that he's hauling loads that he would have hauled for Christmas 4 or 5 years ago. He's now hauling them in July. Because his job is to haul to all the stuff that goes from the main shipping point for UPS is into Anchorage, and then he hauls stuff up to Fairbanks, and then from Fairbanks it scatters out from there, and he's hauling 2 full loads a night of 45-foot trailers and bringing back a couple of empties. It's like crazy. The whole world's going crazy, and we're just along for the ride. If we can just get the NMRA to realize the internet's not going away, we'll be all set. All right. So do you know what to say at the appropriate time?
I believe I do.
We're not done yet, though, hey, Bruce? We got to give out the...
No, sir. We got several things we have to do.
We have to give out that email address.
Email address for those who wish to send us email, which is not going away as far as we know. Our email address is modlerslife, modlers with 1 L, modlerslife@gmail.com.
Yeah, for those of us who wish to communicate by the new fangled electrical digital world.
Yes.
And
the fad,
yeah. And we have a Facebook page at facebook.com/modeler's life. But you can just, I'm sure, type in Modeler's Life in Facebook and it'll come up. And we have our website at amodelerslife.com.
Which also has links to all the episodes of the podcast.
Exactly. It has all the links. I try to keep that updated unless, of course, there's a hurricane and I've lost power.
Well, besides that, it's pretty much there.
And if people like this and they want to listen to more and support the podcast, they can go to patreon.com/Modeler's Life and listen to a whole bunch more stuff over there. And that's it. I think that's pretty much, I think we've covered everything, have we not?
Yeah, because it's a different checklist for viewer mail, so we're good there.
Yeah. And we have no checklist for viewer post vacation creep.
No,
because it's just basically a mess.
Yeah, it'd be way too confusing to try to checklist that now.
What a mess that is. And I think that's it. I think we covered it. Go ahead.
No, I think that's it. It's time for the finale, the wrap up, the end, the sayonara.
Any site?
The fare thee well.
Any sites you want to list, Jerry, for you?
No, we already covered them. You hit pencrr.com. That'll hook you up to all the rest of them.
All right, PennCRR, and then that Model Railroad Open House.
Yeah, there's even a link on that on pencrr.com, so that'll get you there.
That's you know what. I'm very confused, but I get confused early. I am really looking forward to learning all about the Model Railroad Open House and all the way you do that, because that just sounds like something that, holy moly.
Well, that'll just be episode 2 of the 40-part trilogy.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. I'll just ask Jerry what he mentioned. There's a Facebook page. What's your Facebook page?
I think that one is facebook.com/The Model Railroad Open House.
Okay.
But if you go to themodelrailroadopenhouse.com, there's a link there that takes you.
There's the link button that takes you there.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what we need on our website is a link button.
And
Yes.
if you Google Pennsylvania, or no, if you go on Facebook and you put in Pennsylvania Railroad, it'll come up with that site too.
Okay.
And you live in the heart. You lived in downtown Edders, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I do.
Town that does not exist.
Where they roll back the carpets at
And
9.
next time I'm talking to the local constabulary, the state police in Pennsylvania, all I got to do is say, "Hey, I'm Jerry's friend."
Yeah, see how that works out for you.
Say, step this way, sir, and watch your head.
Well,
They'll pull out the picture and say, "Yep, that's the guy."
yeah, exactly. Okay. Well, Jerry, as we close the barn doors on another episode of A Modeler's Life, and the sun slowly sets over the back 40, I guess there's nothing else left to do except for you to say,
Happy rails to you.
It's another Lincoln Homer.